The place for Celtics news. The place for Celtics opinion. The place for Celtics talk. It's Cattles on Causeway.
A good Wednesday to all of you. Thanks for joining us. It is much appreciated. Cattles on Causeway this week. We've got a lot to get into. I want to remind you that we'll be going live on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern. 7 p.m. Eastern starting next Wednesday. So every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, we'll be live on YouTube with Cattles on Causeway. If there's a Celtics game on a Wednesday night, we'll have a live post-game podcast that immediately follows that game. That's what we're going to do. So next Wednesday night, live at 7 p.m. for a Cattles on Causeway podcast right here on YouTube. All right, let's jump into it. The Celtics last night beat the Bulls. They move on to the in-season tournament quarterfinals because they blew Chicago out, and the Nets win. I guess that's the case because that's what people told me, because I did not have the foggiest clue as to what the hell was going on. And let me just say this. I reserve judgment to change my mind eventually on this in-season tournament. Maybe when I see this thing fully play out, I'll start to fall in love with it. I'll start to truly enjoy the essence of what they're trying to do here, the NBA. But right now, I'm not a big fan. I am not a big fan with the Celtics winning a game handily against a bad Bulls team, playing their starters in the fourth quarter of a 28, 30-point game with, 3:30 left. They had the starting five. The Celtics had their starting five last night out there with 3:30 left, up by 28 points. Why? Because of the in-season tournament. The in-season tournament is why. If it wasn't for the in-season tournament and this point differential, then all of those guys would have been sitting down. Did you especially enjoy the time when Jaylen Brown got rolled up on and thankfully did not get seriously injured in a 30-point game late in the fourth quarter? Did you enjoy that part of the in-season tournament? Did you enjoy Hacka Drummond up by 30 during a fourth quarter? Did you enjoy that part of it? And I know some people will love this. I've seen people posting about this. I've seen people talking about this. I've read people loving this. That's fine. You can love it all you want. I'm not a big fan. I'm never a big fan of a game in November having your five starters out there when you're up by almost 36 points. That will never make sense to me. I'm sorry. It will never make sense to me. I don't care about, the in-season tournament cup. I don't care about, and this is my point of view. My point of view, my selfish point of view. I don't want those guys out there. I don't want the starting five out there when it's a 20-point lead with like 8 or 9 minutes to go, let alone a 35-point lead, 36-point lead. I just hate that idea. It's November. We just got past Thanksgiving, and we've got Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown out there in a 30-point game in the fourth quarter with 5 minutes left. And people will sit there and tell me, oh, well, it's a great product right now. Number one, there were great regular season games happening. I know the load management thing was a big topic. The load management thing is mostly overblown, especially for the Celtics. Tatum and Brown play a ton. Tatum has said he hates sitting, can't stand sitting. And sometimes I can't stand him not standing sitting. Whoa. But that's what he said. So people, the regular season games, we have great regular season games on a weekly basis, if not nightly basis. And you know what product I care about? I care about the product being great in June. Having a great product in June, to me, is much more significant than having a great product on November 28th. And why do I care? And I wonder how many of you care. Why am I supposed to care about this? The media cares. I understand why the media cares. And my goodness, we'll get to that because the media has been insufferable. The broadcast media has been insufferable, pushing this thing down my throat every chance they get. I understand why the media cares, because the media pays for NBA rights and the NBA wants them to care. And so for the sake of the partnership, they're going to really push this thing. And that's what we saw last night. An incredible push on TNT. So the media cares about this. I understand the media caring. The NBA cares about this. I understand the NBA caring. I understand Joe Mazzulla wanting an extra couple of $100,000. I understand guys like Sam Hauser and Luke Cornett wanting that $500,000. Even Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum wanting that $500,000. I know why they care. I'm not saying the media shouldn't care. The play-by-play guys, the broadcast teams, I'm not saying they shouldn't care. They should do their jobs, which is to sell you on the importance of games. So I understand that. Again, this is my selfish point of view. I understand why the media cares, because they're trying to get you to click and read and listen to content, all of that stuff. I get that. I get the broadcast teams caring. I understand why guys in the league care. I understand why the coaches care. I understand why the NBA cares as a whole, because they want to build as much interest in the product as possible. So I understand why Adam Silver cares. But why do fans care? Honestly, do any of you care? And how many of you do care? Leave a comment. Do you care about the in-season NBA Tournament Cup? Does that change your life in any way as a fan? Does that get you excited? A cup. Are you pumped and jacked about an in-season tournament cup? Like, I remember a Chris Rock joke back in the day about O.J. Simpson and him waking up every day when O.J. was freed looking for his O.J. Simpson prize in his mailbox. I'm going to start waking up looking for my in-season tournament gift. Like, what do I get out of this? There are no stakes for me unless I'm going to care about the in-season tournament. You know what I care a lot more about than the in-season tournament? Banner 18. I care an awful lot more about winning a championship in June, an actual legitimate championship with decades of heritage and legacy and a banner 18. That's the goal. That's what I care about. That's what I care about when I sit down and I watch this team. I'm not worried about some fugazi Las Vegas tournament cup thing that the league created to try to build midseason interest and got the players to care because they're going to give them extra money for it. Am I supposed to be all excited because players care about a game in November? They should care about a game in November anyway. They make tens of millions of dollars, a lot of these guys. Now we've got to sprinkle $500,000 on the top so they can care about Thanksgiving games. So why do I care? Why do you care? What do I get out of this? I watched 82 games a year anyway. What do I get out of this? Where's my in-season tournament gift? I'm going to keep checking my mailbox because I don't understand why I'm supposed to care. And again, I understand why the media is pushing this, but enough is enough, man. My freaking goodness. Stop telling me every second of every game that this in-season tournament is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Let it breathe. Stop shoving it down my throat. I mean, every single anchor last night that I watched, I haven't been this excited about a November game in forever. Like, every single person was saying the same damn thing over and over and over and over again. I can't remember how fun it could be in November. Like, we get it. We understand. Okay? Whether it's an in-season tournament game or not, I'm going to enjoy great basketball. You don't have to try to sell me. Like, this idea that the Warriors-Kings game, which was tremendous last night, was tremendous because it was an in-season tournament game is disingenuous. There have been lots of great games. I saw when I worked in Sacramento a number of great games last year with the Kings. What about that Clippers-Kings Friday night like triple overtime game? Last time I checked, that wasn't an in-season tournament game. It's one of the best games in NBA history. They didn't need a cup in Vegas to justify it. It's like every single good in-season tournament game now, people are tweeting, people are writing about it, people are screaming from the mountaintops, this is the greatest thing ever. Stop trying to sell me. I'll tell you a quick story. When I went to go buy Kelly's engagement ring years ago, the sales guy was trying to sell me on all these other rings. Just couldn't stop. How about this one? How about this one? I kept telling the guy, that's the ring I'm buying. I ended up buying the ring, but he almost lost the sale. I almost walked out. Don't try to oversell me. Don't try to oversell me on the rings. Don't try to oversell me on this in-season tournament. I'm going to like it if I want to like it. It's unreal. I mean, Scalabrini last night with the math, my God. Watching and listening to Brian Scalabrini last night reminded me, the visual I had was the John C. Reilly GIF. You all know what I'm talking about, right? When all the numbers and the math is floating around, he's doing that like quizzical look. Scalabrini every 25 seconds. Well, if the Celtics win by 26, the Nets have to lose by 7, or the Nets have to win by 10, and then the Raptors can win by 10, and then if the Celtics win by 40, they'll be the 1 seed. Over and over and over and over again. I thought TNT did a good job. All they did was they kept it simple, and they had it right at the bottom of the screen. The Kings win their group if they win this game or lose by less than 11. Warriors win this group if they win the game by more than 12 or whatever it was. NBC Sports Boston, my suggestion, that's what should have happened. Instead of the Dick Lipe tweets, put the numbers on the screen so I can look at them and soak them in. Scalabrini every 30 seconds running off a billion numbers does nothing. I felt like I needed to take a calculus class to understand what the hell he was talking about. I still don't get it. Well, they got to beat him by 23, but if they beat him by 39, this happens. And if they don't beat him by 23, there's a wild card, and the wild card happens if this team wins by this much and that team loses by, oh my God. Oh my goodness. Does Scalabrini get a cut from the league? Is he getting a cut of the $500,000 if the Celtics win this thing? Again, just trying too hard. Did Adam Silver send a memo out to everybody? I mean, it's just enough. And people that are telling me, oh, well, you're just not having fun. Look, it's my opinion. I had fun watching the game last night. I have fun watching just regular season basketball. I'm a big NBA guy, hence this podcast. But don't tell me if Jaylen Brown, when he gets rolled up on last night, God forbid if Jaylen Brown had a serious injury last night, you know what would happen? 100% of the people today would be bitching and complaining about that. 100% of the people would say this in-season tournament is a crock. Why is Jaylen Brown out there when they're up by 30? And people can tell me don't play the if game. Even if it's a 5% risk, the risk is not worth it. The goal is banner 18. Tatum and Brown get hurt when they're out there in a blowout in the fourth quarter. I don't care what's going on. In-season tournament, no in-season tournament, couldn't care less. It's inexcusable. And it would pretty much end any chance of banner 18. Oh, but they tried to win the cup. Zippity-doo-dah. As far as the game, I love the offensive approach in the first half. I thought in the first quarter, Chicago was overcommitting on the driving lanes, which that was allowing the Celtics to find wide open threes with ball movement. So they took just a bunch of threes. I think they took 17 threes in the first quarter, but there were 90% of those threes, 95% of those threes were good threes. They were the right basketball play, and they were taking advantage of the Chicago defense. Then in the second quarter, because of all of those threes, Chicago started to overcommit and really close out or try to close out and contest shots with just outright chaos. And so they were running around like their ass was on fire, and the Celtics took advantage of that. They got into the paint. They cut to the basket. They posted up. They had a couple of the drop-offs in the dunk circle, all of those different things. So, when the Celtics had the threes that were open, that were given to them by Chicago, they took advantage. When Chicago tried to clamp down on the threes by being a little bit too overzealous, the Celtics took advantage of that and started to drive and kick, started to drive and finish, started to post up. So I thought the offensive approach was great in the first half. Sound basketball. And I know we all get wrapped up in how many threes. This is going to be a narrative for like the rest of my basketball life because teams take threes, folks. And I understand everybody's talking about how many threes. It's not how many threes to me. It's the types of threes. If the Celtics are moving the ball and they get an open three, I'm not worried about it. If they're getting paint touches that result in a three, I'm not worried about it. That's what you're supposed to do. If we see side-to-side swing action, east-west, west to east, and you get an open look, I'm fine with it. The threes that I can't stand The threes that I can't stand are the, one pass threes or the pull-up threes with somebody in your grill, the ISO threes, the sidestep threes, the step back threes. Those are the threes, especially if it's the first 5, 7, 8 seconds of the shot clock. Those are the threes I don't want to see. Guys jacking up a three in transition from 25 feet away, 26 feet away. Those are the threes that I'll lose my mind about. But if you're playing the game the right way, if you're driving and kicking, if you're touching the paint, if you're swinging east-west, west-east, if you're posting up, drawing double teams and kicking it out for a wide open three, I'm fine with it. Take 45 of them. If they're good shots, they're good shots. And I thought last night, for the vast majority of those threes that the Celtics took, they were good shots. They came off of ball movement. They came off of paint touches. They came off of side-to-side swings. And let me just mention this before we move on to something different. Al Horford was great again. I don't know, I think people in the NBA need to figure out his secrets. This dude's 37, 38 years old, and he is playing great basketball. Last night, 16 points, 9 rebounds, 6 dimes, 3 blocks, 2 steals in 28 minutes. Big Al was fantastic. All right, I'm going to get to a slight concern of mine in a minute. Don't forget to give us that thumbs up. Need to drive the traffic to this podcast. More thumbs up means more eyeballs. Comment as well. How do you feel about the in-season tournament? And subscribe to this channel. Live podcasts are starting next Wednesday night. Non-game days, 7 p.m. Game days, live post-game immediately following the game. All right, let's get to Kristaps Porzingis and his injury. By the way, he was dressed to the nines last night. Shout out to KP for that. But Porzingis says he has a low-level calf strain. I'm not panicked, but I do think there's reason for some slight concern here, and that the Celtics have to be cautious. I know Porzingis was talking about maybe being back out there on Friday night against Philly. Look, man, make sure you're 100%, and I'm sure they will, but you've got to be super cautious with Porzingis. That was the one thing that we talked about, right? There's a lot of great about him in Boston. It's a great fit. We've broken that down over and over and over again. We've seen the impact he's had on both ends of the floor for this team. But the one question at the beginning, in the middle, and the end of this deal, in the term of Porzingis with the Celtics, the biggest question is going to be health. And so you've got to be extra cautious. Porzingis hasn't played more than 60 games in 4 of the last 5 years. You've got to be cautious. Calf injuries are tough. They're super touchy. Joe Burrow had that calf injury. That thing lingered for like 2 months. So just make sure that caution is priority number one. You don't want this thing to linger. You don't want it to turn into other injuries. Calves are pretty similar to like hamstring injuries. You might feel good, and then all of a sudden you tweak it again. You're out for a couple of more weeks. So do all of the treatment. Do everything you've got to do. Come back when you're 100%. Because lower leg injuries, foot injuries, all of that stuff with big guys, they immediately should cause some concern, even if that big guy doesn't have an injury history. And, even if that big guy says he's okay. Because we've seen it a million times in the NBA. Big guys with leg injuries, knees, legs, feet, not great. So you've got to make extra sure that he's ready to come back. And I really think this shines a light on how thin the Celtics are. And I know we've talked about this, and it was one of the storylines coming into this season that the C's didn't have enough backup big help. And by the way, I'll give Luke Cornett some credit last night. I have been somebody who's criticized Cornett. I'm not a big Cornett guy. Don't necessarily believe in him, but I thought he was much more physical last night. I thought he impacted the glass at a higher level. I thought his defense was better as far as rim protection goes. So I'll give him some credit for last night. Thought he played well. But the Celtics, if you told me that Cornett's going to be the guy in the playoffs, I'd lose my mind. The C's are thin. They got Tatum, they got KP, they got Al. Okay, that's your 4/5. It's JT, KP, and Al. And I think they lack some physicality at the 4/5, which is why Cornett stood out to me last night. I think they lack that physicality. I think they lack some athleticism as well on the bench at the 4/5. Again, Al's great, but he's not a supreme athlete. And we've got to remember that Al is in his upper 30s, and the more games he plays, he might get a little bit gassed. So I would love to see Stevens add someone by March. And the Celtics have the opportunity to do that, okay? They can go out there and find guys, and they've got assets that they can trade for guys. But I would really, really like to see them add a 4/5. If you had JT, KP, Al, and somebody else that you could 100% depend upon at the 4/5, I'd feel even better about this team. So there's a little bit something that's missing there. We'll see if Stevens goes after it. I have to imagine he will. All right, we'll end things on a positive note regarding a story about Jayson Tatum coming up. First, give us that thumbs up, comment, and subscribe. Live pods. Again, live pods will start next Wednesday night, every Wednesday night. Non-game days, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Game days, we'll have a live post-game pod immediately after that game. Some have criticized Tatum's leadership. I've never been a big believer in the guy's going to walk into the room and flip a table over to be a leader. I don't believe that. I think there's many different ways that you can lead, whether it's being a professional athlete or in any other walk of life. If you're a manager, there's different ways to lead. You can lead with passion. You can lead with, emotion at times. You could be the flip over the table person. But it doesn't mean that's the only way that you can lead. And it doesn't mean that's the only successful way to lead. So I think some of that's been overblown about Tatum's quiet nature. We also have to acknowledge that Tatum's 25. And guys usually, in the NBA, guys usually take that maturity, leadership, alpha step when they're around 25, 26. Like, this is the moment in Tatum's career where he should be taking that step. He should be taking that step. Now, there are, I'm sure, anomalies out there, but you look at a number of the guys that are seen as top players in this league, and you look at their ages when they won their first championship, and I don't think it's a coincidence. Giannis won his first title at 26. Jokic last year won his first title at 28. LeBron won his first title at 27. KD won his first title at 28. And there are others that we can mention here. But usually when you hit 25, 26, that's when you start to truly figure it out. On the floor, off the floor, leadership. And trading Marcus Smart, one of the things I liked about that deal on the day of the trade, this is not hindsight, I like the deal. But one of the things I liked about that deal is that it put Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum squarely in the leadership role. They were the incumbent stars. They were the guys with the longest tenures. They were going to be the leaders of this team. No longer would Marcus Smart get into a huddle and lead the huddle. Those days were over. And I thought it was time to put that responsibility on Brown and Tatum. Because again, 25, 26 is right about that age when guys start to quote unquote get it. And so that's one of the reasons why I like the deal. And Tim Bontemps recently wrote on ESPN.com a great story about Tatum calling a team meeting before the season. Bontemps writes, Tatum decided it was time to have a conversation. The Celtics had just a few weeks earlier acquired Drew Holiday the day before camp opened. With Holiday now in the fold, the Celtics had 6 starting quality players and only 5 spots to put them in, meaning one of them wouldn't be introduced as a starter and one would be sitting on the pine in the closing minutes of games. But rather than letting it fester and allowing one of the league's biggest unanswered questions to spiral into a narrative, Tatum gathered his 5 teammates in a room at the team's practice facility without any coaches or anyone else. Tatum wanted to address the obvious elephant in the room. And there are quotes from Porzingis and Holiday speaking highly of the meeting. Then there are some quotes from Al Horford. I think this says a lot. Obviously, Al's been around for a long time. Here's what Horford said about Tatum. Quote, he's taken a lot of accountability. I feel like it's been a progression with him. And it's been good to see him just continue to take steps as a leader time after time. He doesn't have to be the guy that's going to be out there talking the whole time, but his presence is felt. I feel like he is leading us more as a group. I feel now he's starting to see the big picture or the bigger picture. So there's Al saying Tatum's getting it. He has taken steps in the leadership category. hands down. And that's usually the progression of a top player in that league. If you were to define a development of a top NBA player and you went step by step, you would see a lot of what we've seen from Jayson Tatum in that step by step. I hate to use this because it's a Philly thing, but it is a process. It's a process to get a very talented guy like Tatum to the level where he's a top 3 guy in the league, top 4 guy in the league, and can win a championship. And I mentioned all the other examples, and there are more. Tatum not winning a title yet, it's really not any kind of an indictment on him, frankly, because this is what we've seen from other guys who are considered great in the game. Ultimately, what matters is Tatum leading this team to a title. So this story is great. It gives you the feels. I think Tatum, the maturity is there. But ultimately, it's about winning a title and being the leader of a title-winning team. When that is accomplished, that's when we can completely close the book and say Tatum is that guy. He is that guy. We all understand that. It's about banner 18. And until Tatum brings that, we'll still have certain questions about him during certain stretches, especially certain stretches in the postseason. But we do need to note the growth. We do need to chart the development of Jayson Tatum because I think his maturity and his development is obvious if you're watching. It's obvious on the floor. His playmaking, his rebounding, his post-up game, his leadership on and off the floor. He's putting the pieces together, and that's exciting. All right. I remind you, starting next Wednesday night, 7 p.m., live Cattles on Causeway podcasts each and every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern time. If there is a game on a Wednesday night, we will do a live post-game podcast. Until next week, enjoy the rest of your week and weekend. It's Nick Cattles on Causeway.